We now move on to our panel discussion with our partners, Evergent, Prime Focus Technologies, and Qube Cinema. All three AWS partners have built cutting-edge solutions to support Indian as well as global media companies across all market segments, be it the movies, films, theaters, general entertainment, television, digital, sports on all the platforms, and across all workload areas, starting from content acquisition and production to content preparation to distribution, and very importantly, content monetization. It is my pleasure to introduce our panelists to you, Rajesh, Chief Technology Officer of Qube Cinema, Ramki, Founder and Global CEO of Prime Focus Technologies, and Vijay, Founder, CEO of Evergent. A very warm welcome to you all, gentlemen. I want to start by asking you about a little bit about your journey. You know, as the founders of your companies, you all have been pioneers and you've built successful businesses based on your ideas in your respective fields. And we at AWS, we are so proud to be partners on your journey. I'd like to start our conversation today with the why. Please share with us, why did you build what you built? What were the gaps in the industry that you saw initially? And along the way, as the industry has evolved, what are the problems that you're helping your customers solve today? Let's start with you, Vijay.
Thank you, Shweta, for conducting this, and happy to be here. The question of why, right? So, I've been in the entertainment industry, cable, telecom, for almost 25 years, right? Subscription billing, getting consumers onboarded, turning on service, providing a service, it's nothing new. It's been around for a long time, right? So my journey started, like I said, many years ago, and some of my early customers with my prior business were cable companies, satellite TV companies. I have seen, and we as a team, we have seen them struggle with inflexible back office, front office systems. Real story, they would want to launch a product and the IT team would come and say, hey, we're sorry, you can't do it. We ran out of product codes, because we only had 2 bytes in the mainframe. It's a real story, right? So, and some of them tried to build their own systems from scratch and with mixed results after hundreds of millions of dollars spent. And so that's where we saw the problem first, that all these service providers are looking for flexible systems to launch new things. Once there's market feedback, change things on the fly, products, promotions, etc., and they were struggling. So we wanted to build a platform from scratch, get a clean sheet of paper, build something that's highly scalable, robust, carrier grade, because most of our customers were carriers, right? We built that, and going to market was a little tough. We realized once we went to market, we needed to find a way to deploy the platform, and then we ran into companies that are wanting to start OTT services, and that was a perfect opportunity for us to deploy everything we built, all the flexibility that we built and the time to market, helping them launch new services quickly, right? So that's kind of the journey. We wanted to help big service providers do things. We ended up in the getting really, good name from the OTT side. We have customers all over the globe. We were fortunate to onboard over 600 million users on behalf of our customers in over 180 countries. Come full circle, now some of our carrier customers are actually asking us to reduce the dependency on those legacy systems I mentioned, right?
Well, thanks for sharing that. I'm sure it will resonate with many founders of technology startups. Let's move on to you, Ramki.
Um, the journey at Prime Focus Technology started actually 14 years ago, Shweta, and this is happens to be the birthday. We founded in February 2008, so it's 14 years since our founding.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I think our idea was very simple, right? I think the world had seen enterprise digitization in almost every sector of the industry. And when tape became a file, or media became digital, simple idea that there was an enterprise digitization opportunity to the core factory within the entertainment industry. And so that sort of really, and that meant the digitization related software required, and with digitization there's an opportunity to virtualize business processes. And so this opportunity of technology and technology enabled services within the entertainment industry on the back of content becoming digital was really the opportunity that came about. And obviously at that time frame, lots of customers who were confronting this change. The first step that they basically sort of had to take was to sort of now manage digital content. And I think we looked at all the learnings in the other sectors and said, look, there's a need to in order to digitize the entire enterprise, you need a lot more than asset management. And that's when we built a media ERP software. And so that sort of really was the idea, to sort of digitize the enterprise. And then came the construct of what we then sort of modern day call sort of the media supply chain and the play there. So that's kind of really, the motivation to start Prime Focus Technologies was to solve this sort of, enterprise digitization problem within the entertainment industry.
Yes, absolutely. And media supply chain is, the foundation for all media businesses. And fantastic to see all the work you folks are doing there. And we will deep dive into that. Moving on to you, Rajesh.
All right. Well, thank you, Sweta, for having me on this panel. So at Qube, first and foremost, we are all huge movie buffs. We love being told stories. We love storytelling, and we have realized how much of an enabler that technology can be, and that kind of explains everything that we have done, including our genesis as a production and post-production services company back in 1985, and then we started seeing that technology was playing a much larger role in making just the in simplifying workflows, but also was always providing the promise of democratization. So making everybody that had a story to tell could tell a story, and digital technologies certainly were very important for that. So early 90s into the 2000s, we started introducing paradigm shifting technologies like nonlinear editing, digital theater sound in India. These were technologies that were developed and were getting prevalent in Hollywood, and we were responsible for introducing them to the Indian market. My journey with Qube started around that time, some 20 years ago, when digital cinema was beginning to be a possible technology transition, because cinema was one of the last areas to be affected by digital, because we were still doing 35 millimeter film at that time. And early 2000s is when we created Qube as a platform to digitally distribute movies. And we basically organically developed every piece that was needed, starting from getting a finished movie and then turning that into a secure, high-quality digital format that can be then sent to any theater in the world, and still have all of the same standardization and quality benefits that film used to have. And we organically developed a completely end-to-end system for digital cinema. And so that was what we did for about the first 10 or so years in this 20-year journey. And then that was around the time when cloud and prevalence of internet started happening, and we started looking at how we could use those for theatrical distribution. And then I would say the last 5 to 8 years have been spent on making that transition. So there was the digital transition that happened initially, but it was still a bunch of isolated cinemas and isolated facilities that were feeding into cinemas. But now we're tying all of those together, and that's where we are today.
Thanks for sharing that. And I still remember my first meeting with your company. I met Senthil back in 2018, and which was perhaps the first time I truly appreciated how much work goes behind the distribution of movies. Like we all, like you said, we all love our movies so much, and we take it for granted. It'll be available in the theater on the day it's ready for release, without realizing how much work it involves, and of course, content protection, security, and we'll come to that. And I'm glad that you touched upon the transitioning and pivoting to a cloud-based model, because that is my next question. And you shared, how you were tracking the trends in the industry and the needs and the challenges, and then decided to pivot to a cloud-based platform. Ramki, would you like to also share, at what point did you think that the industry was ready, and you also, you folks at Prime Focus Technologies started looking at the public cloud as the default platform to run all your applications and, the ERP in particular?
Sure, I think right from inception, I think we always had thought about our business as, the ability for the industry to consume whatever we offer as utilities, right? And thereby, we conceived our own software as a software as a service. So to that extent, it was a multi-tenanted sort of SaaS or a multi-tenanted SaaS offering. And of course, in those days, if you said cloud, and they said, get out of here, right? Back in 2007 and 8, I think customers were really not familiar about sort of the idea of using anything that sort of is not within their premises, right? And so we were very, very closely sort of watching. Obviously, we had kind of, reluctantly built our own data centers and co-located sort of, our application sort of, from a hosting perspective. And the way we had built our software, architected our software was sort of, this idea of a hybrid cloud type sort of construct, where we allowed customers to sort of keep content where they felt comfortable with, where all the action associated with media was really happening, and that comforted them. Whereas our application was always in a data center, right? And we kept sort of, like I said, very closely sort of tracking public cloud and its evolution and its adoption, its acceptability with customers. And I would say about 5 years ago, I think in my mind that needle sort of moved from a customer acceptance perspective, and of course from a, if you will, price performance perspective, it became widely sort of accepted, at least in the entertainment industry. Of course, direct to consumer systems, it was very obvious. Any direct to consumer play, the idea of cloud, I think, was something that customers related with a lot more. But using it for enterprise applications, I would say it's really 5 years ago. And then we sort of, for us, the idea of sort of the cloud was, pretty natural in our transition, because, we never used bare metal servers. We always virtualized in our IT infrastructure. So for us to move our applications to the cloud sort of was just a pretty smooth journey in that sense. And of course, I think the inevitability is sort of also coming in the construct of sort of, clients now starting to look at AI and ML and so on and so forth, when most of these are not on. I mean, if you look at it, very little AI and ML sort of, you really have third-party sort of engines available for you to kind of deploy locally. It's invariably cloud-based and sort of, so having sort of, and the interesting sort of thing, Shweta, is that, maybe 2 years ago, or maybe a year ago, if you didn't say that, talk about cloud within the 5 minutes of a customer conversation, customers would stop you and say, you don't have anything to do with the cloud? Are you not doing stuff in the cloud? And I've seen this this transition to kind of embrace cloud wholeheartedly. Of course, the fears of the cloud, and I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job in kind of assuaging, educating and assuaging the fears that customers sort of have in the cloud, and sort of, now customers are sort of all in, if you would use the terminology, on kind of embracing the cloud, and kind of, also, very quickly learning how to really deal with the changes and today, if you look at it, we're doing a number of projects where we're actually assisting clients move workloads to the cloud. So which means that, it's kind of on-prem archives transitioning to the cloud. And so, I think, I would say the last 5 years has been kind of, really the adoption curve in the enterprise, I would say, is really sort of, the hockey stick, if you will, at that level. And then now they're kind of trying to optimize and sort of, try and get better and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you've talked a lot about what your customers are focusing on. And really, I think that's the sentiment and the culture that ties and, bonds the AWS partners and AWS together, working backwards from the customer, right? And staying focused. And Vijay, you folks are supporting 500 million users around the globe today, the scale that you're operating on. Obviously, cloud is the answer to that, right? But would you like to share your perspective when you guys pivoted? What were the real drivers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ramki and I have something in common. Our first customer we signed also in February 2008 on Leap Day. I remember signing the contract 29th. So initially, we also did some on-prem and data center type of things, and we really got pushed into the cloud because of market forces. I still remember, we started the journey in 2011, right? A lot of our customers, even today, many of them who want to launch these services, online video services, digital services, once they decide, they want to do it yesterday. The time to market is very critical for them, right? So this is one of those cases where your customer was in Latin America. They had their own data center in Mexico City, and they said, "Okay, guys, we want you to deploy this thing in our data center." And we were ready, and they wanted to launch, and they wanted to beat Netflix, because Netflix was rumored at the time to launch in Latin America a movie service. This billionaire we were working with, they wanted to beat Netflix to market, but their IT folks didn't get their data center ready. We had to find a way to launch them, and we said, okay, how about we start in the cloud? We started with 2-3 servers in 2011. We never looked back, right? So they all say, okay, let's start in cloud and maybe we'll pull back into the data center. Never happened, right? Now today we have across the globe, right, from west coast of US all the way to Sydney, we're in 10 plus zones, right? Hundreds of servers, right? It's in some ways AWS helped scale our business. It wouldn't have been possible, right? So if you look at we do live sports. When you do live sports, you kind of have to scale from 10 servers to 100 or in a matter of minutes. It's just not feasible, especially for a small company to build that kind of scale. And so AWS has been pivotal for us in terms of launching a lot of customers. We again built our platform to be multi-tenant. It made it easier, so we didn't have to deploy a lot of instances, but really configuring and creating that tenancy for each customer and scaling them on demand. And it's been a good journey. I can't say that, hey, we really thought through and we decided cloud was the way to go. Really, the market forces pushed us the time to market, the flexibility, elasticity that's required, and that drove us to cloud. And we're kind of happy that we did that, and it's been a good journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a good journey, and like I said, it's a privilege to be part of that journey with you, with our customers. And I want to go deeper into what Ramki initially said in his last response. He touched upon the fear that some of the media companies had, and in fact, some of them continue to have, of signing up for public cloud-based platforms to run their mission-critical workloads, enterprise-scale workloads. What would you say the impact of COVID, the COVID-related situations the pandemic had, where most of people were working from home and everybody needed entertainment, and the people who are responsible for creating that entertainment and, be it live sports or general entertainment or the movies, right, were all also required to work from home. So did it create some sort of urgency for migrating to cloud-based platforms, making it accessible from home for your customers? So both, I think, Rajesh and Ramki, I would love to hear your perspectives. Rajesh, do you want to go first? Anything to do with movie distribution? Did pandemic have an impact on how the customers or the film distributors were thinking?
Certainly, Swati. So if you even look at the impact of the pandemic, I mean, of course, in many markets, there were theaters had to be closed down because theaters are a communal experience. But then, after that initial waves were over, there were always some markets that were open and some markets that were not. And so we were often in a situation where the content distributors were probably in markets that were locked down. So obviously, the distribution operations and the staff could not be going to their usual place of work. They are all to be working from home, but still making sure that content reached markets that were fully open and reached on time. And so certainly having a platform that was completely cloud-based really made it no different or no less efficient or no less convenient than how they were working in the past. So that whole fact that there was a not so uniform status of theaters being open versus where people could work. So we were able to balance that out, because we are already on the cloud with our distribution technology.
Yeah, thank you for that. Ramki, you folks were working very closely. You are working, with Star Sports, and they had an entire two actually IPLs right in the middle of the pandemic, especially the 2020 IPL. Right. So what was that like working with them, and any other, story that you would like to share with us?
I think pretty much when the lockdowns hit the industry across the board, there are some productions and activities like that were suspended, but there's a lot of content that was anyway sort of, shot and produced and, had to be post-produced. Because right after a couple of weeks into the pandemic, I think the demand for content sort of peaked while the productions were shut. So the entertainment industry really kind of and the fact that we support broadcasters around the world, they have a signal no matter what, right? They have a signal on the air, and they need to promote, and they had to go to back catalog and kind of take the back catalog and kind of make it available. So it was life, business as usual for them, as a matter of fact. But it's just that work and work related sort of stuff was not really allowed to kind of come into work, and so it was a huge disruption that came about. And if it were not for the maturity of the virtualization tools that were available, and all those virtualization tools, many of them couldn't be sort of hosted on-prem because people didn't kind of really plan for you to kind of mount these additional tools. So cloud kind of was the savior of the day. Very, very clearly in terms of because every single media factory activity had to kind of you need to sort of access the content and work around with the content, and had virtualization sort of not being possible, I think all activities would have just stopped. But because of the cloud, because of our ability to kind of virtualize sort of, if you will, workstation desktops and sort of, be able to kind of, get access to the content and very quickly spin up these sort of, we, in the first 15 days, we spun up to about 400 connections, 400 homes, editorial and such work really coming in. And whether you're editing long form shows or short form content, the ability for you to do that, and that sort of is very, very essential. Of course, there's continuous innovation on the cloud on the back of this one after the other. But productions, for instance, like what we're doing now is not commonplace. Our ability to kind of record conversations like this remotely and so on and so forth. And so remote production was really kind of, even though as a concept existed and the industry within sports really were open to kind of embracing that. And they obviously wanted to kind of have remote production purely to kind of, if you will, make it more efficient to produce sports. Initially pre-pandemic, that was the real motivation to kind of look at it. And of course, it was forced on them. The pandemic forced on them to kind of really embrace remote production tools on the cloud and being able to kind of really get really the notion of just not the actual sort of, sport production, but all the pre and post match sort of, if you will, shows that people had to host, using these virtualized sort of, if you will, remote production tools. And post-production was remote, production was remote, and this ability of using virtualization as a core sort of, if you will, a technology and be able to produce that. And today, now it's become commonplace, right? No more would, if you were to kind of commentate for Tamil language, you need to be in Bombay, in the studios, right? Now you can be in a comfortable sort of place in Chennai and kind of, produce your Tamil, and likewise other languages. So it really is now made it more efficient, more convenient. And this is perfect, right? Because without this technology, you don't want people to congregate in what we have sort of done. And this ability for you to kind of now get people in their comfortable spaces contributing to production in the sports world has been sort of, I think has been, I think now people will turn around and say, okay, we don't know what the previous world looked like, right? And this is kind of really what we want to do at some level. So it's been, I'm sure, your own consumption, as you probably can speak to it better, would be the fact that, your consumption must have sort of gone through the roof, cut across industries, applications, end use. Entertainment industry was no different, I would say.
Yeah, true. And also the access to the talent. You mentioned, getting access to commentators. I was part of a project where we were working with a Korean customer, and there was, like Rajesh was mentioning earlier, that some markets were beginning to open up. So there was a limited audience match that was happening, and they needed a commentator who was in Australia. So if he went to Korea, perhaps he would not be able to return to Australia. So he connected from home using one of our partner solutions, gave live commentary, working from his home in Sydney. So yeah, it's beautiful, access to talent. And I think these changes, of course, some of them were forced on some of our customers, but they have seen the benefits and they're saying that these changes are going to stick. This is the new way of working. I mean, new normal is a overused word, phrase these days, but yeah, this is the new normal. So, okay, now I want to shift gears, maybe talking about India and the world. You all folks are truly global companies. You have customers all over. And specifically, I want to ask you, Vijay, we're working with so many content distributors, pay TV platforms, and OTT, of course, around the globe. And every market has its own challenges, right? And therefore, you need different churn management strategies. For example, if you talk about OTT, and I just have to bring that in what Netflix CEO Reed Hastings said about the Indian market. Even after reducing the cost of Netflix packages in India, he said that he finds it pretty frustrating as a market. Right, so it is highly competitive market, Indian market, and low ARPU market. What is your experience been working closely with OTT platforms like Sony Live, for example? How are you helping them with the whole churn challenge?
Yeah. So I think, before I get to the churn part, let me briefly walk you through and the audience through the journey with Sony Live, for example, right? So they're one of the largest broadcaster, an amazing team. We love the team at Sony, and they started this whole OTT service as a hobby initially. They didn't even know this would be a serious business. I think, and I'm talking, 8-9 years ago, right? And I think 2 years into it, they realized, man, it's a serious business, right? And they looked for partners, that are robust, that can really work with them and grow their business, right? So we connected, and what we do is really we bring agility to monetization for a lot of these content services, right? Help them launch new services. Sometimes help them reinvent their business model, right? And in the case of Sony, they started monetizing through advertising initially. When they started working with us, that's when they wanted to experiment with transactional VOD, subscription VOD, and India market, and also some markets like India. You have different types of plans: 7-day plan, 9-day plan. So this is what could be frustrating for Reed Hastings, is because in US you think of monthly plan, right? So these markets, developing markets, you have to be quite innovative in terms of the product mix, etc. So we were lucky to work with Sony over the last 6 years. Help them try different business models. Things like bundling, say, Independence Day themed movies. Okay, just around August, okay, these 20 movies people can buy for, say, 100 rupees or 200 rupees value for that month, right? So things like that, very creative ways of defining products, defining promotions. Who would have thought of we had another customer in India, a 9-day plan, right? It's which is hard to support on the back end, right? So we've been through that journey. So a lot of the OTT providers, including Sony, right, their two main goals, right? Eliminate friction for onboarding a lot of new users, right? How do you make it easy for the user to sign up for the service, quickly pay for the service, start consuming the content, right? Once they're on board, they really want to keep them. They don't want them to go away, right? And so that's where the active churn management comes in. And so we have lots of tools around churn management, and it's becoming a big problem for everybody, not just Netflix, right? There's also now people are talking about subscription fatigue, right? People have these dozens of available subscriptions, and there is a bit of a fatigue there, right? So when it comes to churn, there are two types of churn: involuntary and voluntary churn, right? And we have quite a few tools around involuntary churn, giving them the ability to pay and proactively updating credit cards and things like that. And in the case of voluntary churn, really predicting churn using artificial intelligence, machine learning. Again, here AWS is quite helpful. So as I said, we onboarded over 600 million users across the globe, different markets, right? And we have a lot of data in our platform. Our data is owned by our customers, but we learn also, our algorithms learn over time, right? And what the customer might do, right? What's the predictability of the algorithm, right? So that's where we bring these tools to bear for our customers, so that they can keep a lot of these consumers once they're onboarded, right? So even if you save, let's say the churn is they have 3 or 4% churn every month, right? If you go over a year, that's almost 50% of the customers churn, right? So even if we save 1%, 2%, right, it's huge for these subscription businesses, right? So and we're doing this not just in India, across the globe. and the artificial intelligence, machine learning, our team has done. Here's where I think being in the business for a long time, having worked with many businesses across the globe, that experience really helps so that we can help all of the customers, keep their customers. Right?
Well, you put it the perfect way, and I love the messaging of the flexibility, the agility to go after opportunities as they pop up in the market, and also the ability to run experiments, run more frequent experiments at very low cost of failure. Those are really, I think, the key messages that we also, as AWS also try to put out there for our customers, be it every, any industry, any customer of any size, rather, startup or enterprise. And you talked about AI and machine learning. Ramki, you folks are building an amazing, you actually have built already. I've had a few demos of it, and it's beautiful. The Vision AI platform, using AI ML to automate some of the labor-intensive tasks like subtitling, promo creation. Tell us more about it and how it can help mainstream content owners and content creators to really be able to leverage these kind of abilities and automation to reach out to a wider audience.
Yeah, certainly. I think I wouldn't claim that Prime Focus Technologies sort of was our AI journey is maybe under 3 years old, maybe 2.5 to 3 years old. In some sense, I think we let the industry sort of go through the initial days of adoption, and we had the benefit of that hindsight to kind of look at what's one of the biggest problem with AI and its adoption in the entertainment industry is the accuracy of the data that that these machines sort of have to kind of make decisions. And so one, we were sort of focused on the quality of the data. And second is there's just a lot of data. So making decisions on that data is also sort of, something that you need to sort of support in that context. So we approached it with sort of saying, okay, our sort of mission is to sort of improve that quality of data. And in that pursuit of quality of data, we put together a platform where we would embrace existing engines which do a very good job of certain things. But there's always sort of white spaces that are problems that are not solved, and which is kind of really where we built our own homegrown AI technology. And so we put together a platform. Vision Cloud is a platform where we put together industry solutions from AWS, like the recognition platform or such platforms, and our own homegrown engines. And then we have sort of some couple of patented sort of technologies, technology in the name of machine wisdom, where we are kind of trying to gather wisdom from the intelligence available from these engines to specifically solve for accuracy and decision making. And when we focus on accuracy and decision making, now we are kind of anything in the entertainment industry got to be frame accurate, right? So when you're making decisions that had to be frame accurate and so on and so forth, and that's sort of really where, because we are also a big factory ourselves, because we generate, Shweta, over 1 million pieces of essences every year as part of our services business, and there is substantial scale in there for us to kind of constantly keep looking for automation. So we have enough and more industry use cases that where we have an internal mission of making AI work for you. So which means that, this taking our own technology and making it work within our own services groups, that's kind of been the biggest test bed for us to sort of really bring AI kind of, the construct of really making it work. Whether it is our, simple things like when you're extracting automatic metadata, yes, when you segment content, is it frame accurate, right? And trying to solve for all kinds of segments and making it thorough. We have ITV in the UK now, embrace that technology. We have Hearst Television in the US now, embrace this technology. We have Star TV, which is now pretty much, about 15,000 hours of content every year today goes through, an automatic segmentation by the Vision Cloud platform. And, building from there, we have this, modern day, thanks to the acute appetite for content on consumer-facing platforms around the world. And people want to kind of, especially in the pandemic when you couldn't produce net new content, quite a bit of library content try to find its way, still is transitioning its way into consumer platforms to give them more choice and to help the problem Vijay is solving, to try and reduce churn by trying to give them yet another reason for people to stay on the subscription. So this quest for getting more and more content, which means that you got to repurpose a post-produced content that were existing in their libraries, AI and our conform algorithm, where you are now trying to take, the versions that existed within the broadcasting industry, and you've got to make them available in a uniform sort of way, which means you've got to retime subtitles, you've got to kind of develop more localized versions, all kinds of activities in the supply chain that has to be done at scale and a very, very aggressive time to market windows. All of these cases are where AI is sort of today coming into use with taking away cycle time and sort of enabling the workflows. And of course, again, going back to churn, promoting a couple of pieces of content on a channel was difficult enough to break the clutter. Now you have several tens of thousands of assets, and you got to promote them very effectively to those interested target markets across the long tail of devices. So the marketing problem has sort of become significantly bigger than it was in the entertainment industry. And that's kind of really, again, where AI is sort of really coming in very helpful to kind of help promote content. And so, across the board, our Vision Cloud platform today is being sort of, really put to use, and even content QC for that matter, right? During the pandemic, Shweta, there's a very severe restriction for people to kind of, even though we are mission critical businesses and we got to support mission critical operations, during the lockdown, it's extremely difficult for even a very, very skeletal staff to go into the offices and do stuff. And during that point in time, QC and the content QC was very, very difficult because we weren't sitting in front of the computer watching that big sort of high quality image. AI came into our rescue even there, where we kind of brought in AI for content QC to kind of, at least get an eye that and catch things that a human eye couldn't catch remotely. So AI is actually, this is where we had this concept that we developed during the pandemic called AI everywhere in the supply chain, right? And that's kind of really where, we're working very, very closely with AWS as well to try and take these tools to customers, and all of the deployments that we have on the AI side is on the AWS platform as well. So, it's a great partnership that we built over the last, particularly on the AI space in the last year or so.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Okay, just conscious of the time, and I have to touch upon the topic of piracy in the movie industry. Whenever we talk about movies, I think that's something top of mind in a lot of the film producers and distributors. So, Rajesh, cloud-based theatrical distribution platform, the Qube platform that you folks have built, and distributing movies to more than 133 countries today, enabling studios to release movies in multiple countries at the same time. Of course, it also helps combat the piracy issue, right? Tell us more about that. Yeah.
Yes, Sweta. So, I think there are already technology mechanisms built into digital cinema distribution to deal with piracy. So we are always encrypted at rest. Every movie screening is forensically watermarked. So if there is a piracy that happens using camcordering, we can detect at which theater and what time it happened. Right? So these technologies were always there. But another way to combat piracy is to reduce the need for piracy. And a lot of times piracy was happening not because people wanted to steal content, the content was simply not available to them. So if you look at, in the film days, the largest Indian movie that was released internationally was Three Idiots, was 400 theaters internationally, right? And then it was Dangal that did about 1,000 theaters. This was in the digital cinema realm, but Bahubali 2 5 years ago did 3,000, upwards of 3,000 theaters worldwide, right? So you see the as you make the content ubiquitous, there is far less reasons for people to pirate, because even the pirates understand that it's a far inferior experience for them to watch a movie that was made to be consumed theatrically, to sit at home or watch it in a very in a small device and so on. So definitely the use of cloud and the way that we are able to instantly get the content across the world has definitely made it, or the incentives to pirate content has gone away. And the other thing is also, even from a very commercial standpoint, gone are the days where a successful movie ran for 100 days, right? Today, the opening weekend for a movie is really make or break for the movie. And then having opened it in one part of the world and not opening it in another part of the world, there are issues of word of mouth that can, certainly hurt the movie's prospects and so on. So having the movie open at the same time across the world is what, our technology that is cloud enabled, by using AWS is enabled, to combat piracy, making content more accessible, and so on.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And it's been wonderful hearing all those insights. But before I wrap, I have to ask you one question. One industry trend or the opportunity that you folks are really excited about, and what are you building next? How are you preparing for that opportunity? Let's start with you, Vijay.
Yeah. So it's hard to pick just one, right? I'll with your permission, I'm going to state two. So one is really the sports leagues and even the sports teams themselves, right? If you look at historically, they're distributed through cable companies, other intermediaries. They never had a relationship with the fan, right? And so now what we are seeing is a trend. The sports leagues want to have their own service, and they want to have that one-to-one relationship with the fan, right? And this is the trend we're seeing across the globe, which is very exciting. With respect to live sports, there's some unique requirements on the performance side and also on the monetization side, right? And they're getting very creative in terms of monetization. It could be season pass, could be a game, or it could be a set of games. You can watch 3 games for the whole season, and also content that they can consume later, right? It's they're getting into NFTs, and somebody did a 3-point shooter, and so really packaging some of those highlights, and so that's again, it really stretches the flexibility aspect of it, right? And also, all the things we talked about in terms of eliminating friction for these fans to sign up. Once they sign up, keeping them. If it is a seasonal sport, how do you keep them off season, right? Do you have a pause and resume feature, right? They will just pause. They don't have to sign up again, right? It'll resume when the season resumes, right? Things like that, again, to reduce churn. So we're very excited about this one. And we are, again, we have a lot of features in our platform to support a lot of these business models and variations, etc., right? So other trend, I'm going to wrap up quickly, is really local content going global, right? And so, my colleagues here, friends here, articulated really well. They're in that business. We are working with an OTT service out of India, AHA, right? It's regional content. They're going global with it, right? And going global in each market, the conditions are a little different. How they define the product and the promotions around it, the pricing around it. And we believe that we're going to see more of it, right? And the again, Filipino content. We have one customer that on day one deployed in their service in 180 countries, right? So so that's the other one we're seeing. We were super excited about. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you, Ramki.
Yeah. I think we're still sort of deeply engaged in these, more and more customers sort of trying to extend their journey from, going direct to consumer. the ecosystem of the direct-to-consumer platforms, the studios and the production houses, that chain working with the supply chain to kind of really make this journey sort of extend to support now, whether it is subscription led platforms or advertising led platforms or premium platforms. So if you really look at it, I think the content supply chain itself has sort of gotten extremely complicated. And not only there is complexity, there's also sort of, if you will, velocity that we need to sort of deal with. And dealing with velocity and sort of the complexity, there is sort of finite problems that we need to solve, whether it is localization constructs, whether it is conform constructs, whether it is compliance constructs. Today, as consumption is increasing, reaching critical mass of many markets, direct to consumer or over the top consumption, even becoming bigger than broadcast consumption, linear consumption. I think the regulators are kind of in worldwide are saying, okay, why did we exist before to kind of regulate something on the platform when there's consumption increasing? So I think there is some, if you will, customers are becoming conscious, either through their own affirmative action that they would take on their own, or to comply with certain sort of constructs in these markets. So whether it is compliance, conform, and localization, that needs to be performed in every piece of content that travels around the world. And again, the local content traveling globally. I think there is, if you will, finite sort of challenges that I think the world wants to solve it and solve it smartly. And I think, doing the conventional way is one aspect of it, because nobody has the time to kind of do that kind of volume of content the conventional way. That's really where you need automation. That's where AI comes in play. That's where you need to digitize your enterprise, in that construct to kind of deal with it. And that's kind of really where cloud is central to this sort of, journey, this realization. Cloud is quintessential because, these are kind of, that enterprise is embracing the construct. And so I think that sort of really, I would say, is still the trend that I don't think we've solved it, well enough. I think there's many miles to traverse to kind of, solving some of these problems for customers. That's kind of really, I would say, is the number one preoccupation of ours, at this point.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we are with you on this journey. Rajesh, let's hear from you. One trend that you're excited about, what you guys are building.
Absolutely. I think I would like to first talk about not so much a trend, right? When the pandemic happened, there was a lot of question about movies and audience behavior and all of that, right? And we've been very, heartened to see that every time there was an international territory or a territory that opened up and there was good content available, people really, went back and really went back to the movies in great numbers. And you would have noticed that with the success of Spider-Man globally, for example, but even in the last 3 months or so, we have delivered Indian movies internationally to over 6,000 theaters. So this is including movies like 83, Suryavanshi, and also the surprise hit Pushpa, which started off as a Telugu movie and then really took all of India and also went to various parts of the world where the Indian diaspora was there. So that was very heartening, right? So that's not so much of a trend, that was more a reiteration. The trend that I'm really excited about is that we are looking at a future where content never leaves the cloud, right? So there are now initiatives very strongly happening in the industry where we go from camera to cloud, and then all the post-production works happens on the cloud, and then distribution and playback. We already have distribution in the cloud, but today, while OTT playback certainly happens from the cloud, in the cinema, playback happens from in a store and forward. So we actually get the content into the theater and play them from there. Right? But we are definitely looking at both the improvements in cloud and technologies like CloudFront, which really gets content very close to where they need to be consumed. And unlike OTT, our bandwidth requirements are huge. Right? We are still at 200 to 250 gigabytes per movie. Content. So the ubiquity and the availability of high bandwidth cloud where we see that theaters will also be able to play directly from the cloud. So the trend I'm excited about is that content actually getting birthed in the cloud and never leaving the cloud. And so you automatically get the benefits of security, quality, immediacy. So that's what I'm looking at.
Okay, great. I love it. A future where content never leaves the cloud. I would like to use that as the final note and final message to leave with our audience today. And thank you so much, folks. Truly appreciate the time and all the insights that you shared with us. And thank you for your partnership. Let's continue to work together to innovate on behalf of our customers. Wishing you all many, many more successes. Thank you.
Thank you, Shweta.
Thank you, Shweta. Thank you for having us.